Pajan, hi, Viking, hi,
Explicit boy.
hi, hey, man. Big truck coming down the track, so I'm top and I carry locks and I feel like our child feel cause I'm smart.
When we outside, it's an ocean of love. All that we align to the stars up above. Let we dance now, take a chance now with me. And we go jump till morning. Look, the moon don't sleeping. Tell them we not leaving till the last drop of a canal is madness in the capital. So I feel like I'm running tongue again. Jump and shake the ground again. We with all my friends and them. No place like home. 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 I feel like I'm running tongue again. Jump and shake the ground again. We with all my friends and them. No place like home. 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 Now is the time for it. Carnival, so magical. It's a blessing sent from above. And we go jump till morning. Look, the moon don't sleeping. Tell them we not leaving till the last drop of a canal is madness in the capital. So I feel like I'm running tongue again. Jump and shake the ground again. We with all my friends and them. No place like home. I feel like I'm running tongue again. Jump and shake the ground again. We with all my friends and them. No place like home. Home. Home.
Pajan, hi, Viking, hi,
Explicit boy.
hi, hey, man. Big truck coming down the track, so I'm top and I carry locks and I feel like our child feel cause this morning I'm up in the box. Hey. Mind racing and blood a rush and it's more excitement the more I watch.
When we outside, it's an ocean of love. All that we align to the stars up above. Let we dance now, take a chance.
Yes, indeed, of course, a pleasant good night to all and sundry. It is, yes, the very monarch has committed and has completed, of course, its reign. And, of course, tomorrow, Ash Wednesday, another day, in, of course, a state of reality will now come over the entire nation. I just said that you would have had a wonderful time, but most importantly, you would have adhered or listened or accepted or conducted yourself in such a way that you don't have regrets from tomorrow. Of course, there is still last lap taking place as we speak, but that does not mean that we don't have a commitment and responsibility. Even in this last lap situation, do not be tempted, and of course, have a safe journey back home. Those vendors, I trust you will be laughing all the way to the bank, but having seen what I've seen, being around, I don't think you will be that happy tomorrow. But certainly the band leaders, and of course those, but I consider to be part of the 1% on the avenue, certainly. But I don't think other parts of the country will be as fortunate as they would have been. But of course, that being as it may, reality will strike. So I just had a wonderful time because, of course, we have to continue, of course, to treat. And I want to tell all newcomers and all, of course, visitors, have a safe journey back from wherever you would have come.
Tongue again, jump and shake the ground again. We with all my friends and them. No place like home, home, home.
Watch out! Hi, Viking! Hi,
Explicit, boy.
hi.
This is Juve Morning in St. James in Trinidad Carnival 2024.
Yes, indeed, of course, King of Carnival, and of course, all of the other winners. Of course, I'll try to have it comprehensive tomorrow. I wasn't able, of course, to put it together tonight, but I have heard sufficient in terms of the road match king, at least, and that is, of course, the newly crowned young king, and he seemed to have run away with it. I've been on one spot, of course, near the office that I am currently in, of course, making preparation for tomorrow to begin the process of moving into George Street. But I could not, of course, focus on the mass that was just outside on the streets, some 4 stories above the road, and therefore I would have had a bird's eye view. But commitment and dedication, of course, is the order of the day, and as a consequence, I want to say that I was not, of course, and I am guilty of not participating even as a spectator on this occasion, simply because duty calls, and when that happens, you have to make sacrifices, and one of the sacrifices is that, of course, you devote your time and attention, of course, to what is before you, because at the end of the day, a number of lives will be saved. It is about, of course, addressing the question of crime and criminality. It is about, of course, addressing the hope that would have been dashed and tarnished and dissipated as a consequence of the hopelessness and the haplessness of an administration that clearly cannot create anything except, of course, create opportunities for themselves and opportunities to steal, not opportunities where they take it from the ground up. And, of course, starting from the first rung of the ladder and then go up. No, they about, of course, parachuting from the top. And we must know that that cannot be sustained. That is not reasonable, and that is unacceptable, particularly when you are given the opportunity to serve, and then you abuse that opportunity in such a devastatingly dangerous way for the rest of us. Yes, indeed. So here we go. But of course, I thought it was important as well to treat with the oil spill. That, of course, is a topical issue because there are a number of pieces of information that has come to the fore, and I think we need to address it frontally. You see, I am not convinced that Rowley doesn't know more than what he was prepared to tell us. I find that he took 5 days to reach Tobago, while, of course, international news was, of course, carrying the Tobago oil spill, international news, and the mystery of the boat itself. And some say, and I have no reason to doubt, it's an oil tanker, and therefore it was carrying oil. I cannot understand, in the face or in the absence of other verifiable information and confirmed by the experts, because I heard Farley said that it was carrying sand and, of course, lumber. But we have seen no sand. Well, at least the lumber ought to be floating, but depending on whether it is in the hole or not, I suppose that it may not be able to escape. I talk about the lumber, because lumber obviously is like a rubber. It must float, some of it at least. So we wait to see. But it was Rowley who talked about it may have been carrying illicit contraband cargo. And then he said that, of course, there was some cable. So it means, therefore, it was being towed. And at the same time, no person, no one may claim. Of course, there are ways to track boats of that size, and therefore there is a name, and there is also, of course, the size, and of course, it is said that since that particular boat, in terms of its name, has yet to be found floating somewhere in some part of the globe, we have to assume that that is the boat that was turned upside down in, of course, very, very sensitive waters off the coast of Tobago. So we will have to extrapolate, and we'll have to figure out what are the factors. But I am very, very, very concerned that Rowley, after 5 days, he went, of course, on a public bliss, or should I say blitz, a public blitz to give him bliss, I suppose. Yes, where, of course, he said no amount of material or resources will be spared for Tobago. And to me, I heard that before, because it was his Minister of Works, Sinanan, who regurgitated, who repeated, who parroted the same thing, that nothing would be spared. But I remembered very distinctly that Sinanan said the same thing with respect to the sea bridge, and it turned out to be a disaster. So there may well be, having regard to the shenanigans and the chicanery of this administration, that there's more in the mortar than the pestle. Because I felt that it was too much oil for that to come from a boat engine. So the indications are preliminary, not confirmed, but it would have been a tanker, and one has to ask, what a oil tanker not known to Paria, not known to Heritage, is doing, of course, in Trinidad and Tobago's water. We have to ask the question, what is that all about? And until we get the piece, until we get, of course, the full picture, we must continue, of course, to ask questions. We must, of necessity. Let's go straight, of course, to the lines one time, and I'll take your calls immediately. A pleasant good night. Welcome. Pleasant good night. Welcome. Pleasant good night. Welcome. Good night to you. Good night to you.
You know, all right. You know, that tanker, that oil spill has caused, how much you say? I think, what was the news saying? It was like almost like 6 miles of coastline beaches. Yeah,
Yes.
you say,
Thereabout.
yeah, it was like 10 miles actually of coastline beaches. And guess what? It was one of the worst disasters because it's affecting a reef now and the Atlantic Ocean. And nothing from the Prime Minister. He gave a quick brief conference, a press conference, and the man gone. And Al Jazeera, NPR News in America, and BBC News, and all these other countries are covering this still. And I don't think this man cares because you know why? We want more, or he wants more oil spilled so that he could build that pipeline. You know, that pipeline is very dangerous, because we are on very fragile territory here because of our reefs and the rich marine life we have. And the Prime Minister really doesn't care because he just wants to get the oil. And so it begs the question, what is this guy's mission? What does he want for this country? Because we're not seeing the impacts of the oil money that comes in. None of us are getting rich. People are still struggling for jobs. People living in galvanized houses. And Blue Water is exporting water to the Middle East, and people here cannot get pipe-borne water. I don't know what this guy, you know, it makes me kind of think of like this country is run just like countries in Africa and even like in Pakistan and parts of India where it's just like people are trying to define democracy and they don't know how to because they've never lived in a democratic country. We've always been oppressed. And so how do we define democracy? Because it's not the way I define it is not what's happening here. And obviously, Prime Minister defines it completely different. And I think he probably sees it the way many of you guys see it. You turn a blind eye, and we just talk about it. This guy needs criminal charges for negligence. That is my comment. All right, thanks.
Yes, indeed. And all of that is part and parcel of the consideration. It's not conspiracy theory, but as human beings, having regarded to the disaster that it has perpetrated, that incident on the environment, and the what I consider to be the nonchalant and complacent nature of the Prime Minister in particular, I suspect he knows more than he is telling us. But there's another factor as well. It has to do with, of course, something that is abstract, something we have no control over. And in some instances, in some religion, it is called karma. In others, it is called, of course, poetic justice. And yet in others, there is, of course, the issue of serendipity, something that happens by accident, unplanned. And what we have seen is a consistency of karma, of course, serendipity, and indeed, poetic justice. every day you are seeing that unfolding. That may well be another example, because you see, as we noticed last night, I didn't complete that, so let me complete it tonight. You see, it raised the issue of the Damen vessels that was bought, 12 of them, a dozen of them, by the Kamala Prasad Bisesa administration between 2010 and 2015. And Rowley and they, in spite of the public disquiet and in spite of the investment made, I heard him with his slipshod and the superficial and superfluous, but of course usually square peg and round hole argument or a sudden epiphany for the consideration of that scenario and those assets that was laid fallow. I remember that Stuart Young went to the parliament and once again lied. As he lied, of course, under the American ambassador when he met with him, and he went to the parliament and told all of us that they did not discuss Delcy Rodriguez. Well, it was Stuart Young who said that the vessels are in need of repair, and that, of course, because of COVID, nobody representing, of course, the Damen manufacturers of those vessels could have come to Trinidad. And then when the Netherlands ambassador was communicated by our local media, and when Stuart Young had to accommodate him as he presented his credentials sometime in the past, he said no such thing. There were people here since October 2020. And let me go back to the lines. Yes, indeed. A pleasant good night. Welcome. Pleasant good night. Welcome.
Lennox, it's me again. Since nobody
Yes.
called, I wanted to ask. Yes, I wanted to ask a second question, Lennox.
Go
It
ahead.
has to do with the EMA.
Yes.
And we know the EMA has had a long history of blatant recklessness. They are just a shell of an organization. We know that. But you know, when that oil spill happened, right? You know what the EMA said? They said, "Oh, we thought it was sand and wood, and there's no sign of life on that vessel." And so, well, the EMA said they initially thought it was sand and gravel and wood. Why
Yes.
would they think that? That means the EMA knew that vessel was in the water. They knew it and they ignored it. Because the environmental management is in charge of all marine life too. So they just ignored it. And after the spill happened, they said, "Well, we just thought it was wood and we just ignored it. So nowadays a spill, so what can you do? You know, you will go back and party now and dance." All right, Carnival, height of Carnival, major oil spill, and nobody gives a damn.
Yes, and Tobago is in turmoil, in a havoc state of affairs. But you raise a very significant point there, an observation. Because if it is, because I raised it earlier, if it is wood and, of course, gravel, where all that oil come from, where that streak of oil so long and so intense that it has devastated, of course, and disfigure the beach and obviously the marine life that it would have come in contact with. That's a fair question to ask. Where all that oil come from? Yes, indeed. A pleasant good night.
Where all that oil come from?
Yes.
Where that streak of oil so long and so intense that it has devastated, of course, and disconfigure or
Good night, Lennox.
Hey,
beach
how you good, man? I ain't myself there.
up
How you going, boy?
I'm alright, I'm
Yeah,
alright,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
alright.
You forget me, man.
Nah, the Merry Monarch has gone, and now that we
Lennox,
are back to normal. Go ahead.
it seems
Go.
to me that this government on Carnival, not on what going on in this country. Because I told you about day that this oil spill is an international tragedy. And the government of this country played it down and have fairly dealing with this when the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, which is the prime minister of this country, supposed was to intervene and ask for outside help. I hear this thing making news all on BBC and CNN.
Yes.
Them don't feel humiliated when these things reach outside.
That's why he went.
Asking questions because you think this place is a carnival country, you know?
That's why he went, because of the
And I told you these
humiliation.
things are serious repercussions.
Yes, you did.
But up to now, they ain't mobilizing nothing, you know?
You see, they have things
This
coming
thing
from
spread all
Trinidad.
over the place. Yeah?
Things coming from Trinidad. Equipment coming from
And not
Trinidad.
even Stuart, you're Muslim.
Yes.
But they
Yeah,
supposed
well,
to ask for international help.
yes.
They supposed to ask for international help because they cannot go into the vessel. Listen, you see this government is a bunch of clowns in what's it in jacket and tie, you know. I see Fitzgerald Hines coming and talking a pack of foolishness. Oh, Carnival safe. Carnival safe my foot. It might be safe in Port of Spain, but people still get killed. A lady was going back to she gangsters pull up us alongside the people and they can't shoot up the woman and kill she. Why you ain't talk about that?
Obviously,
He and
he
Ella
would not.
patting the step on the back, like if there is something.
The man that smoke, you know.
And what he's saying fair is that yeah, but he didn't in
Yeah,
his
the
own
smoke.
his
Yeah,
own
he
dream
living in
world
his
because
own.
he talking about
Yeah,
rubbish about
yeah, his own
he gonna
narcoleptic environment. Yeah.
it it doesn't matter with somebody challenge the height of the police officer and even the case say what he's saying. He gonna appeal the matter because if he's a citizen he want to see a policeman in a distance away. He don't want to see no midget. Because a policeman is supposed to be a man of authority and he's supposed to have height. I said, well, who put you there? What kind of authority exhibit as a leader? Huh? He and Ella, two of them could sit down in the same house and drink tea. A bunch of misfits. The quicker this man and this government go, the better, yeah, boy, because they're dragging the whole country down into oblivion. And now, all the gangsters and them, they had the time with Carnival, back to business. By the end of this week, you go see the murder and the crime started catch back out again. More Myanmar murder. And this clown goes along there and talk about a foolishness about Carnival. Have a good day,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Of course, I think it's time. Of course, let me go straight into the
In terms of
oil spill.
security purposes, Dr. Rowley, could not this vessel be detected before? I don't know if you looked at in terms of the detection of the vessel before the spillage.
Well, again, that is speculation.
In terms of the Coast Guard situation, because we have not had a vessel here in Tobago for a while, stationed specifically in Tobago. The vessels that we had to undergo some repairs and so on. And there's a concern that had there been a vessel around, had the Coast Guard officers doing their regular patrols and so on, that perhaps this vessel could have been detected earlier before it came into shore. What's going on with our Coast Guard, and why do we continue to be without a stationed vessel here in Tobago?
We could have if we did see it. On the other hand, we could have missed it if we didn't see it. So that's just speculation. But we really do need to improve our fleet. As a matter of fact, we have...
You see the kind of to and froing the kind of inane, the kind of obtuse, the kind of obfuscation, the kind of semantics that he engages in. We didn't have to see it, but we could have seen it. And that is speculation. We learn now that the so-called 360 degrees radar didn't pick up anything. Didn't pick up anything. So here, Rowley, not telling us, well, at what distance offshore would he have estimated that the boat toppled over? But still tell us that it could have been invisible because the bottom was the top and the top was the bottom. It was below the water. Boy, oh boy. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor. Pleasant good night. Welcome to the corridor.
Hey, good night, my friend.
Good night to you.
Yes, and you're quite right with that, because you could have seen it, but you didn't see it and all kind of thing. I think you could have seen that on the shoreline also. So how come they must see the vessel? Something right about that. You see the condition of that vessel. You see how that vessel looking rusty down and all kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How they have no information about that vessel? I just want to say one thing, my friend. I want to say one thing, and I want the people are trying to be able to understand what I'm saying here. The people who think about going in that vessel to see what happens inside there, I only hope they remember Paria and what happened to those 4 divers. Because though we can have part to sacrifice, and that's why I see it. Because you go inside and you get trapped inside it, and you hear somebody saying, don't allow nobody inside it. You understand? So I hope you know what to do it. You understand? Because this whole thing sounding so bad, eh? You understand? A boat passing through, and they have even looking up and somebody else's waters and thinking you have to get passes, whatever it is, right? But how come new information coming out? Well, are these supposed to know what vessel passing through the waters and whatever and thing before it meant that? You understand? You remember that time in Venezuela when you cross the water, what happened? You know what I mean? I know get a beach and all kind of thing, and they hold them and they see the boat and all kind of thing just for passing through the water. So, let me tell you, the border patrol landing, they have to beef up. They complain about camera services shutting down the radar system, wherever it is. But yet, still, you have these kind of things happening where you could see that boat from the shoreline. And you tell me, you can't get out, right? Something has to be wrong in this place. Right? Because, if you watch it, the boat, look at oil spill out of the boat. How we know if all selling oil or some kind of thing, right, on the low, and that boat passing through there, something went wrong with it. Something had to be wrong. Something had to be my partner, right, sir? Good program.
Yes, my friend. Yes, my friend. And very good speculation. That is where I was going. That is what I inferred. Because, of course, we have not seen wood. The gravel may have sunk if there was gravel at all. But certainly, there was another cargo there. And that was a tremendous amount of oil to attract international attention to Tobago on that matter. And don't tell me that the bottom of the boat was so low that radar couldn't see it. Well, I know when you're going to Tobago, for example, on one of the ferries, or when you're standing up right on the shoreline, any part of Trinidad, you can hardly see a pirogue. And of course, from a distance, but the radar was supposed to detect pirogues because it is pirogues that is mainly used to fly between Trinidad and Venezuela. So what hogwash Rowley talking or saying? But let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. A pleasant good night.
A pleasant good night to you, Mr. Lennox, and all the listeners.
Yes, indeed.
And all the slave catchers. And this I would like to tell to the slave catchers. Come back, cancel the OPG, and we leave a porous border. But he go on and he say that he buy 2 vessels and he ready to go to the big one. It was the best 3 days he spent in a vessel and it's adequate. And there's more time to patrol the border outside. And then he come with the brass face because he top is the bottom and the bottom is the top. He upside down. Because that man don't know that he saw his liar, he chronic. Because it comes just like when that is an illegal vessel crossing the border. BP is the platform and the installation outside the fishermen from Maruga and Toko Ganin got close to the platform. And I want to ask a question. Who is the private security had the boat, the chase of people from the platform and them? But you see, when you're doing underhand things, and in the next 14 months, the arrested are about to come back because there is no tenant to fix. And they go on America to tell them about their guns coming to Trinidad. But they tell them, fix the border. So you see, he just now want to say that Tobago, after how much days, he now going to have a talk to clean up and heritage. Because you have no clean up team, it's contractors. And I said a square peg in one hole, just like Mustak and Piper, and the people who experienced to do the work, they wouldn't let them do the work. Because why? That fella who upside down, there's very money go on for the vessels and them. And then the slave catchers and them will say that, oh, they had one, it wasn't for the cancellation. See, there is now let me hear now, let us talk about what we have and where the asset is, where the helicopter is to make the patrol. Have a nice night for narco trafficking.
Thank you very much, man. And I think it's about time that we put things in perspective. I want you to cross the T's and dot the I's. I want you to think cursively, continuously, and let us look at it. Dr. Rowley, United States, and speaks about crime in his country and the question of clearly the borders, but of course claiming that guns come in through the natural or the official or legal ports of entry. Of course, that is in itself a flimsy argument because you ought to have what? Scanners at the airport. All right. The Americans come and they gave him, I think, 2 scanners. Insufficient, but then we only have 2 airports or so. No problem, formal. But I am sure, I am certain that the question of the 12-day-man vessel will have come up in terms of the porosity of our borders and the accessibility of contraband from places like Venezuela, and we know they are desperate and they will engage. Let's go to the lines before I continue. A pleasant good night. A pleasant good night.
Yeah, pleasant good night, Mr. Lennox.
Good night to you as well.
Yeah, pleasant good night, Mr. Lennox. I want to say good night to everybody live. I want to say good night to everybody live in the chat region and internationally. So I say, look, Mr. Lennox, I'm call you before you start with your editorial.
Yes.
So, Mr. Lennox, I believe that boat will turn over. I feel like the new boat to bring for the sea bridge, you know. So, who is the 2 best negotiators? Because if a boat over 100 meters could come into the waters without being detected, it had to be a boat to the sea bridge. So they went and negotiated that and the 218. These people, Mr. Lennox, every time you hear these people speak, you could hear the level of unintelligence. Because the man say, to see it or not to see it is speculation. He know what he just said.
Yeah, just imagine.
He just proved why we have this infestation.
We could have cited us. If we could have cited, trying to make excuse for the non-functionality of the radars, you know. That we try to do there, you know. But tap yourself like a market crab. Now go ahead.
Yeah, what is it? Yeah, Mr. Lennox, when you say to CEO is like speculation, the man trying to be a wordsmith and sound very uneducated and stupid. The thing is, we now realize where the guns coming in from, because we have no border patrol on the scene. You see, the thing is, the law-abiding citizens who live in abroad coming home to Trinidad, the law-abiding citizens who go in for a vacation and coming home, custom want to open up the suitcase and take the little things when they bring in for the family and charge them hard. But we see the borders and the port, they won't do that. You see how it is? The law-abiding citizen is the one who paying for this. And the more and more time go on, Mr. Lennox, the internationally you will see contract and the tourism could get back, because I know this is going to affect a lot of people's pockets and property tax coming, and I know a lot of them who own small businesses and all of them who own it'll be hard for them to pay all these apartment bills and things. And I'm feeling sorry for them. But Mr. Lennox, we have faith in God and we have faith in you, because every night, every day, 365 days, they just come out and eradicate you. Have a good night, Mr. Lennox.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, you're quite right. This idiocracy, stroke, not just mediocratic government, but they are also a bunch of thieves, klepto. They are idiotic, stroke, kleptocratic. And I was making the point, and it was not by accident I referenced Stuart Young meeting with the then American ambassador and going to the parliament of the country and telling the people that he did not discuss Delcy Rodriguez, or that didn't come up. And the ambassador had to say a blasted lie, breaching technically protocol to defend himself in public, as of course Stuart Young tried to set him up, because he had a duty to mention that or to discuss that, simply because he is an American and representing the American government, and the Americans had always impossible for him to omit that. But let's go to the lines. A pleasant good night. A pleasant good night.
Pleasant good night, Mr. Lennox.
Pleasant good night to you.
Mr. Lennox?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear. Loud and
Yes,
clear.
Mr. Lennox.
Yes,
well, I just want to throw your mind back a little bit, right?
Go ahead, yes.
What happened, you could recall when the government came into office, and we had a super fast Galicia who was doing the work of between the bridge at Tobago and Trinidad, was doing an excellent job.
That's right.
And then the same party mash up the sea bridge and bring us at an old boat.
Yes.
To play savior and mash up the economy of the Tobagonians.
That's right.
Now, we have a boat that passed nothing in sea. It had no name. Nobody had drunk. Nothing. We don't know nothing completely. But all over the place, and nobody knows nothing. And then we have somebody coming from the central government to play savior and telling me what to do to make it look good. It looked to me like this man tried to gain back some confidence within the Tobago people towards him in the upcoming general election. Because he does do a good strategy, you know. Allegedly, his strategy is very good with misleading the people and making them feel everything is everything. They play lifesaver after they don't do a damage, allegedly, and then now in a mess, and he come now to play lifesaver. What you think about that? What's your view on that? I'll listen off it.
Yes, indeed. Please do, because I want to say up front, if he believes that would work, and I'm confirming that is a possibility, because he engages in these extraordinary, these phantasmagorical schemes that he develops. Email, fake oil, phantasmagorical. To Gary Griffith not being able, of course, to return as a commissioner of police because he interfered, of course, with the list, the short list for which the Police Service Commission should have sent or left with the president, and then it forwarded to the parliament. I'm coming there. Sorry about that, but we have to give priority to the callers. Pleasant good night, welcome. Pleasant good night, welcome. Yes, indeed.
Well, it's good to know you had a state carnival. Right. But what I'm calling to find out from Mr. Hines is if the people that died before carnival couldn't really reach to have a safe carnival, and if those that die will die after carnival, if they will have they wouldn't reach a next safe carnival for next year, peace God.
well said.
And the 5% decrease that the only talking about die is for the people who get shot and didn't die. But they're taking kudos for what the doctors and the nurses say. So that's why you'll have a decrease in the homicide. Because they doesn't check on how many people get shot and didn't die. You understand?
Yes.
So we're taking some kudos for that.
Yes.
So you will ask Mr. Hines tomorrow if it's not important that the people who died before or after, just only on Carnival Day.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, well, you see, it's important, and I want to tell you, go to the top of the class because you have unveiled the level of dotishness and asinine, despicable conduct of this group of people. The people who died before, even though it was Carnival season, that doesn't matter. And as you rightly said, those who are going to die after, as you rightly said, and you put it in perspective, whether they will have a good Carnival next year. But there's another factor that I want to, of course, weave into that matrix that you just gave of dunce-headedness and total and absolute intellectual and cognitive, what I consider to be malady of these fellas. They're totally stupid. Because here it is. When a fella gets shot and he didn't die immediately, but he died, let's say, a month or 2 or 3 months afterwards, as I know many have met their premature death by having a bullet in them or having punctured some vital part, and they lived a couple months after. Rowley and they, Hines and them, that is not part of the statistics, you see? So you're quite right, my friend. You have a right to make a mockery and lampoon them and make and of course, make a caricature of them. They will tell you, since that is not weaved into or find itself into the statistics, well, you have to conclude then that they died from natural causes. That is what Hines and them would like to make us believe. They died from natural causes because they didn't die from the bullet immediately. They didn't die from the wound or the abrasion immediately. They died sometime afterwards, not captured in the statistics, and then tell us that they reduce the increase. They reduce the increase by 5%. I mean, it is ridiculous. And you have a right to make a mockery of them. But let me get back, of course, to this boat situation, because it's important that we understand it clearly. You see, when Rowley was making his many jaunts in the north to the United States, the opposition would have brought to the attention of the Biden administration, the American administration, whether it was Trump or Trump to be, as the case may be, that you have 12 boats there and you're doing nothing with it, but you're complaining about the porosity of your borders. Obviously, and I'll tell you why, by deductive reasoning, meaning that you go through a process of elimination and you will come up, of course, with the answer. Deductive reasoning. Just as how we know that Rowley would have been intrinsically involved in the fake oil matter. And when one looks at the reason for closing down Petrotrin and we apply deductive reasoning, we would see that it made no sense closing down Petrotrin. We would see it made no sense closing down the oil refinery. We see it made no sense, of course, inventing a pariah and, of course, a heritage, because it made no difference. Then we know Rowley was attempting to exculpate himself from having matter. Let's go straight to the lines. A pleasant good night. Pleasant good night.
Good night again, Lennox.
Yes.
But let me tell you something. They don't come people tell them want to fix Carnival, so the Carnival is safe anyway, right? They ain't come to them. They ain't dead in Trinidad. They did something else.
Yeah.
When the whole of Trinidad is supposed to be competent, anybody there. But you see, you cannot donkey logic. You cannot.
I mean, the donkey logic and donkey
that is
smarter
kind of
than
donkey
them.
logic. And that's the kind of donkey logic signs and errors come with. And the man answer the fella from who talking about who's asking about Tobago. Well, Tobago didn't forget the PNM, you know, when they give them 12-1. So I think in the next general election they will get 0. Because they allow them to see they want to manipulate the PHA, right? That's why they wanted the delay to help Farley. Them supposed to intervene from the time that spill take place, but they put it in a way that Farley looking bad and stupid. Farley can't do nothing and ask for international help. It's the central government that to do that, and they should have been acting on that from day one. I feel about it as submarine. It could be a submarine. That's why they didn't see it. Have a good night.
Yeah, but the bottom on top. The bottom on top. But of course, before I go to my conclusion on a very particular direction, I want to take your minds tonight on the boat scenario and, of course, that oil spill. But I have to do it, of course, what I consider to be cogently and systematically and methodologically, so that you get the gist of it. But the caller is quite right. Rowley has the proclivity, the tendency, the inclination to manufacture crises in order to get his way. But usually when he creates a crisis, it's really to thief money. As we saw when he created the crisis for the Tobago Bridge, as the caller rightly said, Sea Bridge. He didn't care at that time that the people among whom he was born and in his formative years, the years when he would have been, of course, indoctrinated into the value system, religion, morals, etc., which he, of course, he regularly espoused, but does not practice. You could talk how much you want, but practice, that is the proof of the pudding. So, he didn't care. He orchestrated the frustration of the Galicia and the leave. And of course, he frustrated the maintainers of the two ferries at the time, the Spirit and the other one. Yes. And of course, Bay Ferries, a Canadian firm, was hired by the UNC and was doing well in terms of making certain that there were minimum breakdowns, etc. He caused them to leave. And under specious, spurious, and of course, extremely questionable, as he is Prime Minister as well, questionable circumstance, and bringing some charlatans to maintain the vessels. And as a result, the economy of Tobago, as caller rightly said, experienced its darkest days in a long time. Its darkest days, as we have seen, with for the first time in its history, the made no profit under a Rowley administration. The man is totally blight and curse. It appears that the Likoto Jumbi has ricocheted, has boomeranged, and therefore nothing they do is like, as we would say in Lavantil, like Kobo defecate on them. Some people just say they shit on them, whichever is appropriate. Kobo shit on them. So let me get back, of course, to the question of Dr. Rowley's frequent flyer to the United States. It must have come up, and the UNC had a duty to point out to the American administration, listen, we bought 12 boats. Trinidad and Tobago is an island. And with 12 boats, a small island at that, is not like Australia, an island continent, or even Jamaica, that is larger than us. But 12 boats is sufficient to, of course, patrol our borders 24/7, 365 degrees. So the Americans must have told him that. And as I said, we're using deductive reasoning. We're using deductive reasoning. Why would I say that I am solid in my analysis of that situation? Why? Because Rowley and they were resistant, they were reluctant, they were recalcitrant in terms of bringing those vessels that was bought by the UNC into operation, into part and parcel of the assets of the Coast Guard. So they prefer to leave it there. So 1 year, and just around that time, between the 8th year and 9th year, they find money to fix them. They find money to fix it, to fix them. You will hear him, of course, just now. They find money to fix it. So it means that the Americans were in the tail, and that is why they decide now, because they were crying foul. They were asking for things that was unnecessary. A pleasant good night. Sorry about that. Go ahead, my friend.
Hello, good night, Lennox.
Good night to you.
Rowley. Yeah, good night. Rowley seem like he taking orders from the UN and the WHO. Because like anytime to make a decision, you always have to be trying out, but you can't make it on your own. Something else.